Hello and welcome to Mending Chasms, Building Bridges in Community. My name is Leena Sharma and I am your host. I'm looking forward to my conversation with today's guests. And first, we open with an acknowledgement.
Canada exists as we know it today because of colonization. While we work to disrupt colonial and oppression-rooted practice in the work we feel called to do at Mending the Chasm, we also acknowledge our presence as uninvited guests on Brant Tract Treaty territory known as the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabeg, the Huron-Wendat, the Attawandaron or Neutral, and many other Indigenous communities who have stewarded this land since time immemorial. We also acknowledge the harm of colonization that resilient people of the global diaspora have experienced, including displacement, land theft, enslavement, violence, genocide, and cultural appropriation. Our aim is to work in solidarity with fellow community members to heal from the harm of colonization and to reclaim the joy, the inclusion, well-being, and liberation that is every human's birthright.
My guests today are poets, artists, and leaders in our community. And if you've been watching this show, then you know that I'm fascinated with the theme of bridges, especially bridges that can help us reach each other across our differences and help us to find ourselves in each other's truths and stories. I believe poetry is one of those bridges that can create spaces for deep listening, and that listening with the heart can promote truth-telling and building connections between First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and settler communities. My guests today are winners of Gimaa's Allyship Poetry Contest. Gimaa means chief or leader in Ojibwe. And really the purpose of the poetry contest is to invite students to submit entries through poetry, spoken word, or visuals to express what allyship with Indigenous communities feels and looks like to them. This poetry contest is hosted in partnership with the Dubwewin Project, which means truth in Ojibwe, and includes the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations, the Oakville Community Foundation's Community Classroom Program, and an allyship council of cross-sector allies working to embody reconciliation in our community. My first guest is Rosvitha Bwanga, or Ro, and she is a multidisciplinary artist who finds endless inspiration in nature. When she's not creating visual art, she writes poetry to supplement her practice. And my next guest is Talia Dantino, who is a young poet and writer from Niagara, Ontario. She hopes to get into screenwriting as well as journalism as she furthers her career. Welcome, Ro and Talia.
Thank you for having us.
Yes,
You're
thank you.
welcome. So glad to have you here. And so congratulations, I should say that first, on being one of the winners of the Allyship contest. Maybe I'll start with you, Ro. Tell us about yourself in your own words.
Yeah, so originally I actually planned on becoming a biologist. So I went to school for science and that never worked out. So I kind of fell back into this path of following one of my other passions, which is like visual art. So I just recently graduated from Sheridan College in the Visual and Creative Arts program. And I'm currently navigating that. So applying to art shows and just figuring out how to develop like something that works for me. But actually when I'm not creating visually, so when I'm just feel exhausted from all the painting and drawing, I actually turn to poetry. So I think poetry is the perfect outlet to process stress and negative emotions, and something that unifies all of my work, so from art to poetry, is like this love for nature and an inspiration from the natural world.
Love that. I wonder if you could take a moment now to read your poem for our viewers.
Yeah, so my poem is called Think of Someone. To think of someone who isn't me. When I think of someone, I think of trees. Trees together build a forest. Roots, forever, different sources. Our differences are not a weakness. While they may define us, they are and always will be our greatest strength. Why be enemies when we can be friends instead? We can make an active choice to really listen, to hear the voice of another. Although the heart can't heal in one day, It's a chance to recover, a chance to reclaim what has been lost, what has been taken, what we almost forgot, or maybe have never learned. It's our turn to respond and let a lineage live on. It's a chance to remove what divides us, to embrace each other and truly reconcile. To think of someone who is in need. When I think of someone, they'll think of me, because together we share this world. Together, we are allies. That's it.
Thank you so much. That's beautiful. It evokes so many emotions. And I'm wondering, maybe one question is, what was the feeling or message you were wanting to convey with that poem?
So when I was first writing it, I really wasn't thinking much besides conveying the message. And the message of allyship to me is a sense of togetherness. And when I think of togetherness, the first thing I think of is a forest, actually, because a forest is made up of so many different trees, but on the surface they may differ. Under the soil is where they're kind of all connected. All their roots are connected and supporting each other. So I really just drew on that image, and that is kind of what I envisioned for what allyship could look like for people.
Amazing, amazing. I think you really were able to weave. That's some of the feeling I took from that poem. So thank you for that. Talia, I'm going to just take a moment now and just hear from you. So tell us about yourself in your own words.
So I'm 23. Besides writing, I love traveling. Haven't been able to do too much of it yet, but gonna do more of it. I love like fitness, hanging out with my friends, things like that. Before I wanted to be a writer, I actually wanted to be a lawyer. I still have an interest in law, but it's not a career I wish to pursue anymore, but I'll definitely end up writing some sort of probably law or crime-based story at some point. And I recently discovered I would like to get more into screenwriting as well. I've always liked the medium of film, but it's more so the behind the scenes writing aspect that I realized I love, not really the filming and cinematography and camera part. That's not the part I'm interested in.
Love that. Love that. So much creative outlet at your kind of disposal in terms of ways that you can contribute and shape your community and your society. So I wonder if you could now take a moment and read your poem for us as well.
So my poem is called Dialect. We talk in ways no one has heard before. The curl of the tongue, the flick against teeth, spoken with such passion, impeccable verve. Sometimes words are not needed. It's a look, a glance, a touch, a shared feeling that keeps us here, side by side, hand in mind. We love in ways we cannot speak. It's in the way we dress, how we feed, how we keep each other warm and clean. If you cut both of us open, you'd see pink insides, red hearts that beat, and a soul so full it yearns to break free. Kezalu means I love you, and it lives on our tongues quite comfortably. I always called it a country until you told me it was a turtle, and we are the guests. You and I lay in the snow, arms and legs spread wide. When we stand to look at the imprints, no labels, no pain, just fluffy white. Kezalu means I love you, and because of you, I will say it with pride.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. What would you say is the message or feeling you were wanting to convey with your poem?
So I wrote that poem because one of my very good friends, he is Native himself. He's from the Mi'kmaq tribe. And he taught me when we first became friends that Kezalu means I love you in their language. So we always would just say that to each other. So when I heard about the allyship, the word itself and contest, I just thought of him. And I just thought of the bond of friendship and how no matter where you come from, what you look like, what your culture is, when you're friends with somebody, you just love them no matter what. So I really just drew on that feeling and just how beautiful that bond is between people. So
I appreciate that so much, and I appreciate you sharing kind of some of the backstory of that, and really could feel that coming through. I know I was curious about who is this relationship, who is at the heart of this. So thank you for sharing that. Maybe the question that I might lean into now, and maybe I'll ask Ro first, is, how did you first discover your gifts as a poet and artist?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the earliest I can remember is maybe 13 or 14 years old. I was just really obsessed with like nature and wanting to appreciate it. So I would kind of write these cute little poems about like things I saw during the day, a beautiful sunset, or like maybe a certain type of cloud or something. There wasn't really any deeper emotion in it. I would just write, and I was kind of just exploring vocabulary and learning how to describe certain imagery. But it wasn't until later on in my life, so when I was attending university, I was probably 19 years old or so, where I was feeling a lot of stress from just life in general. And that is kind of how I developed the poetry, from just subtle appreciation of nature to kind of something that represents more of my own personal emotions. So it kind of transformed from there. And I realized that it became a really good habit for me to just write when I need to write. So it became a pattern, and it kind of just developed from there.
Appreciate that so much, and I just love that it was almost like an emergence, because I think a lot of us tell ourselves the story that, oh, I'm not creative, I'm not an artist, and I've come to believe we are all artists. We just have to find the medium that we want to express ourselves in. So I appreciate you sharing kind of your journey. I wonder, Talia, if you could tell us a little bit about, how, what was the pathway that led you to, poetry and kind of embracing your artistry.
It started when I was young. I would write down any dreams I had that I remembered, and I would make stories out of them. Because if my friends were in them, then I would write about that and whatnot. So it started there. And then from there, I just sort of got into poetry very slowly. And then I got more into it when I was a teenager, because I saw a lot online and I would read it just on social media. So I started to appreciate it more. And then from there, I started writing my own. And then throughout high school, I just kind of perfected and honed the skills of poetry. And then after high school, about a year after I graduated, I wrote and published my own book that I like just printed on my own. I did it with a friend. And then I did my own 2 years ago in 2022. And I printed that as well. And that one is available on Amazon. So I'm very proud of it. But yeah, so my journey started very young, and then I'm still here today, but it's been about 10 years now. So
Amazing, amazing. And so our viewers will see the images here. We'll definitely share that. And what was the title? You want to tell us the titles?
oh yes, it's called Heart for Brains. And it's a little blue cover with a little illustration on it that I drew myself. So I was quite proud of it too, because it has little drawings throughout it. So
Amazing. So maybe staying with you, Talia, who are your inspirations?
mainly poets. I don't have too many specific poets that I read. I pretty much read anything I can get my hands on. Specifics though, I would say Charles Bukowski. His poetry is quite melancholic, but I really appreciate it because it makes me appreciate the good parts of life. And then yeah, I'm recently reading Billy Collins's work. I like his stuff. And yeah, just pretty much anything I can get my hands on. Any artists. I draw a lot of inspiration from a lot of musical artists, just to see how they came from nothing and then they create so much, and then they're doing what they love and people appreciate it for what it is. So probably just a lot of writers and a lot of musical artists, I would say, just really inspire me.
Wonderful. Ro, I wonder if you could share with us, who are some of your inspirations?
So I kind of feel like I got into poetry in a different way than some people. I kind of just started doing it myself, not really paying attention to stuff that other people write. And I kind of wish I was reading more poetry before, because the best way to learn about poetry is from reading what other people write. And I'm kind of just going through that process now. So I don't have any specific poets that I look to, but it's kind of just discovering what contemporary poetry has to offer. So I'm even looking now recently to try and go to like live events where people do poetry readings. So this summer I'm gonna try to go to as many events as I can, not just to read poetry, but to have the experience of listening to it.
Wonderful. I appreciate the spectrum, like just talking to both of you. that, and if for viewers who are watching, or especially young people, like there doesn't have to be like a pedigree or a training that you have to get. If you can just connect to the feelings and the thoughts, and even like you said, Ro, as a place to process. I really love that message, and just that it's not something that's it's more accessible than we think, I guess, is the message that I'm getting from what both of you have shared. So one of the things I always wonder about artists, because I am an aspiring writer, or I guess I write in my own way, but how do you liberate yourself from perfection or the need to be perfect, or that inner critic that really might be, could really hamper or dampen your creative process? Maybe I'll start with you, Ro. What is something that you do to help you push through that, or is that even an issue?
So for me, being both someone who creates visual art and writes, I feel definitely more that I have to strive for perfection when I'm doing visual art. So painting or drawing, it's a good for me and I love to do it, but it is also very stressful to be perfect. Whereas when I have enough of that, I kind of turn to writing and I feel so much freer because I don't have a need to be perfect when I write. So the main reason why I write is to help process my emotions, but it's also because it kind of gives me this creativity when I need it. So yeah, it's actually just interesting how writing can actually inspire like a visual art piece. So a recent project that I did in one of my final courses was actually completely inspired by a poem that I wrote. So I wrote the poem months ago and I was kind of just letting stuff out. And then I made this poem. And then months later, when I had this course, that poem actually became an inspiration for like an actual sculpture and a series of paintings. So to kind of go back and forth from written and visual arts, it's like really freeing for me. So it kind of gets rid of that need for perfection.
I love that. I love that idea of, I feel like what I'm hearing is that we find ourselves, or you might find yourself and yourself better, because it's, maybe many of us are, we journal and maybe that's the medium, but to take it and try to transform it into an expression that you want to share with people, whether that's through art or like visual, painting or spoken word, or through, is really powerful. I'm really inspired by what you shared. Now, Talia, I wonder if you could share, your response to, how do you liberate yourself from that need to be perfect, or that inner critic that can hold us back?
I think a lot of it comes from sharing my work, like with friends, family, classmates, and just getting that external validation that something that I think is good, other people also think is good. Um, I think any artist is gonna have that like self-doubt and that like, is this good enough? Like 24/7 all the time. But when you share it with a friend and they say, I like this, or they ask you questions about it and you can tell they're interested in it, you get that validation that if one person likes this, then how many others will? So that and just a lot of reminders too, like sometimes you're gonna hate the things that you love and you just have to keep on going because eventually you'll love it again. So there's always those little rough patches.
Appreciate that so much. Again, like feeling such a spectrum in both of your responses, and I heard in your response, Talia, like the place for community. And so, what I understand is community is such an important space to nurture, care, and develop ourselves in. What communities support you as artists? And maybe again, I'll start with you, Talia, and then I'll invite you, Ro, to respond.
Definitely my program because I am in a creative writing program, so everybody's very supportive in that. And just my friends here. I'm not really a part of any major writing groups or things like that. I kind of like to write on my own when it comes to poetry. But yeah, I would just say my program and my friends, and of course my family as well. I have a few writers that I know that I'm related to, so every now and then I'm like, hey, what do you think? My brother's also in film, so he's familiar with writing and whatnot. So I'll send it to him and say, what do you think? And so those communities, I think, just very artistic communities.
Amazing, amazing. Ro, what about you? What are the communities that nurture you as an artist?
So I think I'm still kind of navigating that trying to find people who are involved in contemporary poetry. And I think being here actually on this show today, it gives me a really good sense of community, because it's almost like I didn't acknowledge how much other people would appreciate poetry, something that I would write. So being here actually gives me a really great sense of community, and it's inspiring to kind of make me look further at what other local opportunities are there.
Absolutely. It's why I was inspired to reach out. I'm like, this is so fabulous. I was so moved by your submissions when they were launched and when the winners were announced. And I just was like, I would love to talk to you. So I want to just thank you again for saying yes. You didn't really know me, but hopefully going forward, like there'll be some interesting ripples, I imagine, coming out of this conversation. So there's a really critical question I probably should have asked sooner, but what does allyship mean to you? And so maybe I'll start with Ro. What was the why for choosing this contest?
Yeah, so just I guess contemplating allyship became a really important thing for me, and it just is. I just wanted to write about it, and then when I realized that this was an opportunity, it just seemed like the perfect place for me to kind of share that with other people, because I'm still in that early phase where I really just write for myself. But now, after especially this experience, I realized that other people could benefit from my writing too. If I have a feeling and I want to kind of write it down, then other people might share that feeling. So just going back to this concept of allyship being like trees in a forest working together and supporting each other, that's what I really wanted to tell everyone. And I hope that anyone who hears the poem or reads the poem can kind of reflect on that for themselves and for how they conduct themselves in their own life.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for that. What about you, Talia? What does allyship mean to you, and how did what it means to you inspire you to uh, submit a poem for this contest?
To me, it means friendship, but it also means collaboration. So going back to what Rose said about, meeting like-minded people who also want to write poetry, like this contest has really opened up my mind to that. And I definitely want to follow in Rose's footsteps and find more communities where I can do this, because it has been very enjoyable. Um, but yeah, so friendship and collaboration, in the sense where when you're a writer, networking is huge. So to collaborate with other people who want to just, also get better and help push each other forward, that's a really wonderful thing that I also want to embrace. So like even in the workforce, like you don't have to be friends, but you can learn to collab with people. And if you become friends, then hey, there you go. But yeah, friendship and collaboration at the core of the meaning for me.
I appreciate that. It just really accentuates the truth that we're all sharing a community, regardless of whether we love each other, like each other. We still, we need each other to move forward. So I feel like that was a legacy that came out of that night where the winners were announced and we all got to hear the winning entries. And I know for a moment I felt like that feeling of we're in this together. So I know that was something I left that night with, and hopefully viewers, as you listen to the poems and reflected hopefully on allyship and our commitments to reconciliation. That's an important theme for me as to why I also wanted to feature you both. So kind of thinking about the sentiment I'd shared earlier on around that we're all artists and that it's left to us to figure out, what art do we want to put out into the world? How do we want to, share our message or our calling? And so, for any of the viewers out there who are maybe, young artists or maybe considering it, or maybe, right now it's I'm just writing poems in my journal and I'm not sharing them, or, what advice would you give to young artists and poets who have not yet discovered their gifts?
First, I would say don't give up, because people are going to tell you it's bad, but there's a lot of famous writers and artists and musical people who have been rejected time and time again until they made it. Second of all, I would say consume other artists of the same medium. So if you're a writer, read a lot of books. If you're an artist, look at a lot of paintings. If you want to make music, listen to a lot of music, because hearing other people's will inspire you and just help you get better. And also it's important to explore other genres. So yeah, those are my two main points. Don't give up. and consume other media. And then, of course, the third and most important is just believe in yourself. Because if you love it, it's worth doing it.
Love that. Thank you, Talia. Ro, what about you?
Yeah, so I think trying out new things is definitely a great way to learn anything. And even if you just want to learn poetry, drawing might help you figure out something about poetry because we don't know in our minds, things kind of work back and forth. For me, like switching between art and poetry is really helpful. So you never know. You can try everything and you might find a new way to do something. Secondly, I would really recommend journaling. That's a great way to start learning how to write and just being comfortable with writing. And then out of that journaling, you might kind of evolve into creating poems. So kind of constantly trying new things and constantly writing will kind of help you evolve into something that you want to be.
Amazing. Those are such accessible pieces of advice. I wonder if maybe the last final question before we end our show today is a quick, like, what are you working on right now? Is there something that's, that one project or one thing that you're working on? Maybe Talia, you go ahead first, and then I'll ask you, Ro.
So right now I'm working on an idea I had for a book that I actually am now turning into a TV show. So I'm just writing the script and working on that, doing some research for it. But anything I do, whether it's articles, my own work, you can find it on my website, which is tdonline with 2es.com. But for right now, screenwriting and bettering my skills is the main goal. So those are my projects and also finishing school.
Thank you. Thank you, Ro. What about you?
So for me, I'm kind of submitting some poems to just different places, different magazines. But the main thing that I'm doing right now is working on my artwork. So just making up like a whole portfolio and just applying to galleries and art shows.
Amazing, amazing. So I want to thank you both again for making time to be a part of this conversation. Hopefully, viewers, we can look out for artwork and more from you in the coming months and years. I look forward to following your journey. You're both an inspiration, and I really thank you for having that courage to submit an entry to this to the contest, and that I got to know who you are and got to have this conversation. So thank you again to both of you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So if you are a member of the community and there are people that you think we should be talking to, continue to keep your recommendations coming. I appreciate them. I appreciate you for watching. And until next time, keep building bridges in community.